always swore I would never be my father. I would never be that monster. I would never subject my kids to that. And like the thought came over me and I'm like, I'm becoming my father. And I was like, oh, you know, and I couldn't shake the thought. And, you know, I was like, oh, we're going to go out tonight and I'm going to take it easy. And, you know, I'm not going to drink. And that never worked. And I end up getting loaded in Fort Lauderdale. I'm riding my motorcycle around. So I go by the house Sunday evening. It was July the 19th. And because I'm going to grab a couple things, like when nobody's there, like this is how I move in life.
Right.
And I open up the door and I walk into an empty house that I created. The dents are still in the carpet. The hangers are laying on the ground. And I broke down in the living room and I said, God, please just don't let me die.
I have an amazing guest today, a friend. Clyde Tiger is the owner of Fit Fixings, and he's a beacon of inspiration, a devoted husband, father, an amazing entrepreneur, and once on a very he was on a crazy path. Let's just put it that way. That almost led to his early demise. Clyde's life took a miraculous turn, guided by divine plan, right? And so here we are, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Happy and excited to have you here because we've interacted before, and I've only heard parts of your story, and I did that intentionally because I wanted to be spontaneous and I wanted to hear it firsthand on camera.
Okay.
Because I want to share it with people. I know that. I know there's a lot behind the story, and I know we share some similarities, and so I'm excited, man. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are. I know you're a husband, you're a dad. Tell us about your family, and then we'll jump into the other stuff, man.
So I guess my little elevator bio is native Floridian. I grew up down in South Florida. Father was Native American. I'm half Native American, half white American, I guess is the best way to put it. My dad was Seminole.
You're an actual American.
yeah. All the way through, I guess.
Yeah.
My dad was Seminole. My mom was white. I spent some time growing up on the reservation down in Hollywood. Kind of battled kind of square peg round hole early on. You know, that's a big part of my story. I'm a father. I got 5 biological children, 2 godsons that are part of my life. I'm super blessed. I got this business, you know. That's
7 kids total.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have all the kids all the time, so I don't want to sell it that way. But I'm responsible for a lot of children.
You guys have cable now?
That's cable. Right. So, father, first and foremost, that's the greatest title I've ever earned in the game. Absolutely. Just interesting path, kind of stumbled and bumbled into where I'm at today and how kind of me and you connected. I coach, I do some youth sports coaching. I do some work in the nonprofit space, give back. I guess most people classify it as like at-risk youth, but I think it's more of just, working with youth, men especially, that just may lack some male accountability, father figure, whatever, just someone to be consistent with them and show them how a man conducts himself. And I didn't know for a lot of years. So that's a big part of my story as well. And I had someone come into my life and kind of guide me. So, I'm just grateful, man. It's just been an interesting ride, to say the least. Not a formally educated guy, GED, got kicked out of high school, stumbled and bumbled my way. And, God has blessed me abundantly. I'm in rooms that I have no idea how I got there, but God, but for the grace of God, I'm there. And I just do my best to pay it forward and each one teach one, try to pull somebody up behind me and try to instill that in my children, and as well as the other young men I get to come in contact with. And, when I say young men myself, I'm, I just turned 46, but, I interact with gentlemen, and young men anywhere from, my age down to early as 13 years old. So my spectrum is pretty wide. So I got it's just a connection. It's just what God gave me. That's all I can really say about it. It brought me to where I'm at today.
Gotcha. Guys, so just for you guys out there watching, Tiger. I call him Tiger. It's a
everybody does.
It's a cooler name. So actually,
it's a great introduction piece, right?
Absolutely. When he came through the gates, I told him to tell the security guard just to stick his head out the window and say, "You're right." And the guy started laughing. The security guard started laughing. But just a little bit of background. So Tiger, we go to the same church.
That's correct.
And it was just amazing to see other tatted guys at church. And so we were introduced, but I think we naturally gravitated towards each other. And we met at a Starbucks. We were talking about some business things. And in the midst of that conversation, some really interesting things about your past came up that I was like, oh man, this dude he's telling my story, right? And I'm like, I got to get him on here because we are all about transformation stories. Tiger has not come through the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan, but he is a story of transformation, which is what we do here. And that's why I wanted you to come on this interview. Yeah. And so, you know, I know who you are now, right? I see you as a business owner, right? People know you in the community. Everyone that I've talked to in the church says, "Oh man, that couple is amazing." Yeah. You know, referring to you and your wife. But it wasn't always like that. Correct. It wasn't always like that.
Yeah, definitely wasn't always like that.
Right. Know? And so, and a lot of the inspiration that you have now for what you do comes from your past.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You already told me apart that for the most part, I know some things about Native Americans. Yeah. I actually a long time ago stumbled into a hotel that was an Indian or Native American preserve type owned by
reservation.
them.
Yeah.
And I got there like at 10 o'clock at night, and I didn't know I was staying in the 9th floor, and I got in the elevator, and I didn't know if I was going to make it out of the elevator. I was like, these folks are, they're interesting people, huh? Yeah. But anyway, so tell us how it all got started.
Oh gosh, so you know, it's just like I said. I guess square peg round hole. You know, for me, and again, I just speak to myself in this situation, you know, and just how it affected me. And I'm not saying anybody did this to me. This is just how my mind developed over time, you know, for whatever reason, environment, or anything like that. So like, you know, for me as a kid growing up, you know, on the reservation, you know, most of, you know, my cousins, family members, friends are, you know, darker skinned, you know, more of a, like, I would say closer to like a Polynesian or Mexican toned skin, you know, a little darker. You know, I don't, you know, I'm a little darker than average, but I'm not, you know, I'm not as dark as that. So it was kind of like there was some racial stuff that went on there, you know, because I was white and, you know, white boy this, white boy that. Then, you know, the flip side, my mom's neighborhood, my last name's Tiger. They know I'm Indian. So the Indian jokes start and like picking on me and making fun of me. And, you know, for a long time in America, you know, Indians were all, or Native Americans were always, you know, kind of a less class, you know, and that carried on a lot, you know, and, you know, less than or this, or, you know, just kind of like you mentioned about your experience about, you know, being wild and the stuff that goes on. And I'm not saying none of that, the wildness and some of the stuff that goes on culturally isn't true. However, I don't, you know, just like any culture, like there's positive and negative everywhere, right? So, sure. And people tend to link to the negative, right? They attach to the negative stuff more than the positive, the people that did successful things and, you know, kind of change the trajectory of the culture in general, you know?
Right.
So, you know, that growing up, not knowing where I fit in, you know, my dad wasn't in the house. Him and my mom parted ways when I was about 3 years old. I had a stepfather come in, you know, good guy, funny, told jokes. There was just a lot of stuff that as a child that I was exposed to that, you know, I wouldn't expose my children to.
Sure.
You know, I'm not saying my mother or my stepfather or my dad did it intentionally.
Right.
I just think
it's what they knew.
We were all a product of our environments,
sure.
Right? So we just try to do the best we can with what we've been taught. And that's something I had to learn over time because I did hold a lot of resentments for a lot of years. You know, I held onto a victim card for quite some time. But I had to realize that I made a lot of those choices once I got into early adolescence, that I let my inability to communicate my emotion it kind of came out in other ways, which was negative as far as like anger, aggression, rebelling against any type of authority, kind of very closed off, kind of an emotional wall I built up, you know, for fear of hurt. You know, I didn't want to be hurt, and I didn't want, you know, to feel a certain way anymore. So I just closed up that, tucked it away real neatly. I'm good. Thanks for the information. And the rest of you can just kind of screw off. You know, that was my life.
Yeah.
And it led me down, like, it led me through a lot of challenges. Yeah. You know, and again, not until I connected with my mentor when I was in my early 30s, like, that I realized, like, I played a role in that. I made those choices. I did that. Yes, this is your circumstances, but there's other people that come from worse and better situations than me and don't make those choices. Right. So at some point I have to own that part of my life, you know? So I think as far as childhood, you know, I did normal kid stuff, but again, I always had, you know, I was always like, never felt like I fit in, never felt good enough. We kind of talked, you know, to it before we got started today, like, you know, battling the imposterism. You know, I still battle it today. You know, it took me a long time to like publicly, you know, let people know, like, hey, I'm not formally educated, and this is my background, and this is me, right? This is who I am, and I know at the end of the day that it's God, right? God is the only person that I have to answer to at the end of this journey, wherever it may be. So like, my testimony is my power, and you know, in the affirmation of like the strength of God and where God can take me, right?
Absolutely. I think you said something really important that we oftentimes say in our programs, and we talk a lot about this concept of extreme ownership, right? It's like the minute you stop pointing fingers, now you're empowered to change, right? And I love that, because I think that it takes a long time to get to that place. It takes a lot of healing before you can actually say, okay, this is what I was born into, but I also made some choices that led me down the wrong path. And I think when we have that kind of clarity, we can start resolving things, right? But that's all rational stuff, right? You talk about God. Was God present in your life always, or how did that come into play?
Like foxhole prayers. You know, I had the God get me out of this. Hey, God.
I call him the cosmic bellboy.
Well, it's the foxhole prayer. Like, oh, if you just get these handcuffs off of me, I promise I'll never do this again. Or if I don't get caught doing this, I promise. You know, that was my relationship. Gotcha. You know, and again, I didn't grow up like. Not that I didn't know God, but I wasn't like educated about God or any background. Again, that didn't come until early 30s as well. You know, so like it was just a lot of self-will for a lot of years. You know, and again, owning that, like, you know, like you said, like just we have to find this deadly earnestness about ourselves no matter what challenges we face, whether it's, you know, like you know, with your empty the bucket plan and nutrition and health and wellness, like, and again, that's another part of my story too, but like, you have to own that. Right. Like if we're going to get a foundation of growth, right, I have to admit that I am powerless over this situation, and I need something bigger than myself and something to, you know, to move forward and say, this is like, lay all the pieces out. Say, okay, this is, you know, like I say, like businesses that don't take inventory, you know, usually go bankrupt, right? So like, I have to lay out all the stuff with my coach or whoever I'm with, my mentor, and say, look, this is all my inventory stuff. What is this? What does this look like? Is this good or bad? And you say, oh, that's bad stuff. Throw it out. This is good stuff. Keep it.
Yep. Can you pick up that mic a little bit so we can get a little bit better? Just pull it up more towards your mouth. There you go. A little bit more. Just up right there. That's good. See how I have it right here? All right. Good stuff.
Are we good now?
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting in regards to what you're saying is that, you know, I also grew up in a very dysfunctional home. Saw a lot of things that no one should ever see. Not even adults should see some of the things I saw. I mean, a little bit of that background. I grew up in a third generation mafia family, and I'll tell you my whole story in New York City. Very violent, you know, just upbringing, lots of crazy stuff, lots of crazy conversations that I should have never, no one should ever hear. And the men that were around me, Like you said, they were doing the best they knew to do with what they had. They were street soldiers.
Yeah.
They came here literally with orders to do whatever they were doing here. And so those were the men I had around me. And that was a tricky tape that I had in my head for a long time on how they filtered the world, what they thought about the world, what they thought about money, what they thought about women, what they thought about what they could or could not do.
Yeah.
And based on that, soccer, which was big for me. I played competitive soccer, and I believe that soccer to an extent was God's way of saving me.
Yeah.
Until he really saved me. Yeah. Because that tucked away a lot of my trauma, because now I had this sort of ideal, this thing to pursue. But man, that ended at 23. So when that ended at 23, from 24 to 31, all of those traumas came out like crazy, right?
Yeah. Because that's where we fall in line, like similar timelines. So.
Yeah. So I no longer had soccer keeping me safe. I always tell people it's not that I was good until I was 23. It's simply that I had mentors in my life that kept me in check. Yeah. And I had curfews and I had all these things that were basically guardrails. But when those guardrails went away, boy, it came out. Right. Yeah. And so you start experiencing life. You start kind of making your own guidelines for life. And you go out there, and what would you say, like when did those childhood traumas really come out and you started kind of living those things out? When did that happen for you? Well, like I said, to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I never really, like you said, like I didn't really know, right? Again, there was anything wrong per se. Again, you don't know what you don't know because you're a kid. You have no idea, right?
A fish doesn't know he's in water.
Yeah. So as I started to get, from early adolescence, trouble started, stuff like that. Again, I was always battling the inferiority, stuff like that, not being good enough, blah, 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 blah. And I was a tall, lanky, 6'4", skinny kid. I got tall quick. High school, I was like 6'4", 160 pounds, like a broomstick, basically, right, on legs. And loved to play basketball sports, but didn't make the basketball team because I wasn't doing the right stuff at school. The basketball coach knew that I wasn't doing the right thing. I didn't hang with the right people.
Right.
Elected not to, put me on the freshman team. I instantly got a resentment for him, screw the system, they're against me, And I just continued to add to that. So then it just continued to build, like the system was against me, right? If you were raised how I was raised, or if you felt the way I felt, you'd know why I do what I do, Right. Again, that's when the school, no school, started dabbling and, drinking and doing drugs and all that space, and that stuff started happening. And then the anger and the aggression started coming out because, again, my emotions are unbalanced because I'm putting substances in my body, stuff like that. I'm making clear decisions.
Let me stop you right there, because you said something that I think is important to chat about. When you felt that rejection from the coach, did you ever experience like abandonment issues?
Oh, 100%.
Did that sort of proliferate that? Right?
But again, like I didn't know. And again,
the reason I ask is because probably to about a year ago, didn't recognize, I'm going to be 46 in April. Okay. So this is like an entire life.
Yeah.
And everything from when I was single from dating to my interactions, if in any way, shape or form I felt rejected, I would shut down. Right. I never understood that was simply abandonment issues.
100%.
Crazy, right? Insane, dude. Like literally that, when I figured that out about a year ago, my brain went,
aren't those great moments? I love those moments where like all the pieces, like they like the synchronicity of like the planets, like everything aligns and you're like, whoa.
But it's crazy.
You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like I had that moment and then I was like, well, maybe after all, these particular situations weren't as bad as I made them out to be, but because I had that wound inside me, it just felt 10 times bigger than it actually was. And I cut a lot of people out of my life because I didn't want to get hurt. That's ultimately when you have abandonment issues and anything that resembles someone rejecting you.
Yeah.
Ooh, Like that feels.
Yeah. That, it's a safety mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're taught. And again, like going back, like not until I started to like sort out all the pieces with my mentor is like that I realized that like, oh, like I remember crying to my mother when I was a little boy, like, why doesn't my dad come to my games, right? And this is Pop Warner, football, baseball, right? But I don't put those like I never like in 30-something years old, I started to put these pieces together, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Oh,
it takes a lifetime, bro. It's crazy.
But again, like just kind of, and I won't, go off on this, but it's like those pieces, those spiritual experiences, right? They like magically come together, and they're gone as quick as they come, right? Because like they're so intense, like I can't have them too long because then I start to think I created them, right? So they're like just this, everything aligns, and you're like, but like you mentioned, like you didn't put this together till you're 46, and why? Because like that was God's plan.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Maybe you couldn't handle it all. Maybe it'd be too much for you to process. So whatever, wherever you're at now, like it's like, oh, here, and then it all collapses. Then it's gone. Like that feeling of like, oh my gosh, is fleeting, so to speak.
Yeah, I also think in terms of like when you hear situations like this, one of the best ways for me, I'm a visual guy, right? I'm a visual learner, and I think of when you go into a store and you start picking up things off the shelves, right? Yeah. So every time you go into that store, you pick up different things you need, and I feel like a lot of those wounds are that, right? This is my way of reframing and saying, well, I go into the store and I picked up this abandonment issue because I needed to grow there. Yeah. Because later in life, someone or something is going to benefit from that wound, right? And that's what every single aspect of those wounds, I believe, are once you take responsibility and you realize, hey, this is a growth path, right? This is a journey. And one thing you said about, why didn't my dad ever come to my games? Did your mom go to your games? Yes, but patchy, right?
Yeah.
You know what one of my big resentments was? Yeah. I played at a high level. I played in big stadiums. My mother, I never had my dad. The only thing my dad left was his last name. That's all he gave me. My mom never saw me play. Never saw me play. You know what her excuse was? What? Her excuse was, I just never wanted to see you get hurt on the field. But my mom was involved in some pretty dangerous things back in New York City in the 80s and 90s. I'm like, you weren't afraid of that, but you wouldn't come to my game? Like, this is just at the Boys and Girls Club. Like, But it's crazy how much that affects, right? Yeah. Guess what? I don't miss one of my daughter's games now.
Me neither. I don't miss none of my kids' games because again, it's up to me to change the trajectory of how my family does life together, right?
100%.
So it's like, again, all those things, my experiences and my life lessons are my greatest assets for what I do today.
100%.
Right? For the young men I work with, my children, the guys I coach, the other, the people I interact with, like, the strongest word you could ever say to somebody when having a conversation or they're going into something like an emotional or a challenging experience is to go, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like, was this like this for you? Because it was like that for me too.
That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, right? So it's like, me too.
Yeah.
Right?
Like we're in a therapy session here.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, that's the synchronicity of life that I learned that like, I'm of more value to share my heart and my realness of who I am, which again, I come from like tuck it away, toughen up, pull up your bootstraps, you don't cry, blah, 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 the pecking order of society, of my environment and the neighborhoods I grew up in. So like I had to grow past that and realize that like I have to be willing to lay it all out there for people because at some point or another, even if they don't receive it now, maybe somewhere down the road, they'll remember that conversation.
You just got to plant the seed. Yeah.
Come across somebody that's having it. So it's say, hey, I got a guy you can talk to.
Yeah.
So I think that's important in that.
So you start things because this is a snowball, right?
Oh, 100%. Snowball rolling down Mount Everest at warp speed. This is me.
This is why, and maybe people on the other side are not going to agree with me, because now the acceptable drug is weed, right? It's like, it's just weed,
weed, man.
Just weed.
The devil's lettuce.
But the devil's lettuce. But the interesting thing, man, is that there's always a gateway drug, right? And for me, it was alcohol because it's funny because it's a learned behavior for me to interact, and I do it well. I can go into environments, and the vast majority of people that know me are like, "Oh, you're an extrovert, right?" Yeah. Absolutely not. Like I'm very much an introvert, and so when Monday through Friday, successful business, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just destroying my body, right? Yeah. And and the reason I would do that is because I was trying, number one, to change my state, right? I was trying to forget a lot of my hurts and pains, and
self-medicate.
Right. And it was just a snowball because it started with alcohol.
Yeah.
And then it just started to escalate. Did you have some of those escapes?
Yeah, 100%. Like, again, I started dabbling early on, 13, 14 years old, with substances that like.
What was your gateway? Like, what was the
I would say, I again started off smoking weed, drinking, and then it's like gets into smoking cocaine and all kinds of crazy stuff, to where then it was like, oh, as long as I don't do any cocaine-based substances, this comes around like 18 years old. Oh, as long as I don't do any cocaine-based substances, I'll be okay. I can just drink and smoke weed. Of course, that doesn't pan out. Then I get in jail and arrested and probation, and like, oh, you can't do drugs on probation, so I'll just drink.
Was that just for possession or
no? Just
other things.
What do you mean, jail? Oh, jail was so I went to jail. I got into a domestic altercation.
Gotcha.
Not one of my finer moments in my life, but I know today that it was, again, I'm not in a clear mental state, right? Sure. If you're involved in relationships that both of the parties are under the influence of substances, things are not going to go smoothly, right? And if I already have emotional management issues, it's not going to pan out well. It's just not. And especially if the individual you're involved with likes to participate in that type of that type of interaction, physical interactions, I guess is the best way to put it. And I'm not saying that it's anyone's fault, right? Again, I have to own my own choices in being in relationships like that. However, not being in a clear mental state. Again, this is the snowball. Starts there, goes there. It's, it's guys fighting here, there, it's just this violence. And again, this emotional imbalance that I dealt with for a lot of years and eventually gets me into trouble, but again, I had went to jail for others, throwing stuff at gas station windows, fighting, fleeing, like it wasn't like, oh, that's my first time ever, leading up to that, there was some other stuff too. And again, I was always a dodge the bullet guy, I was like, oh, just close enough. Didn't get that one. Oh, wag of the finger. Like, oh, I'm good, And then until there. And again, for a long time, I wanted to blame, oh, it was her, it was this, it was that. But like at the end of the day, like I chose to participate in that relationship.
Right. Right. We didn't talk much about this in the beginning, but, so did your parents have a similar upbringing?
I don't know. I wasn't a part of, like my dad and mom were, like I said, left when I was 3. Had no idea like what that relationship looked like, really. I mean, I was too young. My mother and my stepfather, he was kind of the fun guy, drink and tell dirty jokes at the dinner table and haha. And like, but as like, again, adolescence, there was some turmoil there, but nothing physical. But again, like, it's just kind of stuff that goes on in the, just kind of like you spoke of, like, environmentally of where I'm growing up and spending time with. It's just very unstable environment across the board from everybody. It's like everybody. It's not just me or anybody. It's like you see it everywhere. It's like the thing.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting subject, and within the faith circles, they call it generational curses. Right. Within the secular world, it's simply called communal learning. So we learn from each other, and so if your dad's a carpenter, there's a great possibility that you'll become a carpenter, and so on and so forth. And so, I when I hear what you're saying, like when two people are interacting, and you were talking about in terms of a relationship, and both people are basically blinded by substances. Of course, that's not a good combination. Oh no. But then I'll take it even further than that. I now, with what I know now, we both share the same faith. And when I see people that are clinging to relationships based on emotions, right? I hear people all the time. They're like, "Oh, we have great chemistry, and you know, we get each other." I'm like, that's the adhesive, like, you know, and that gives for a lot of issues and a lot of turmoil in most relationships. Whereas when two people, that adhesive is their faith, right? Particularly in Jesus, that creates a great chemistry that just constantly renews and restores itself. So you go through all of these situations, right? And then, you know, you have the jail situation, you're battling with substances. When does it get to that breaking point? Like, when do you get to that breaking point?
So again, I mean, it goes on for another 10 years. You know, this is early 20s that I get into this.
20.
So like you know, again, real quick, you know, 13, 14, start dabbling, drugs, alcohol. That goes through high school, get kicked out of high school because I'm fighting in school, not going to school, coming to school loaded, all that. They ain't got time for people like me.
Loaded with weapons or?
No, loaded, like intoxicated.
Oh, okay.
You know? I'm like, no, that was not a part of my high school years.
I'm like, oh, you had guns on you? You were one of my guys.
Just these guns.
So
you know, high school did that, you know, and then get kicked out of high school, get into, you know, construction, working, get into this relationship that's verbally and emotionally abusive, and there's kids involved, and she's coming from a marriage. It's just like mayhem. Yeah. And this continues till I'm 22 years old, till again, the law tells us you guys cannot be together in the same space anymore.
Gotcha.
Like, this is a wrap. So again, getting probation. Then along that path, I meet my first wife. You know, again, and this is another characteristic of my behavior during that time in my life was, you know, manipulating the situation to best suit my needs. Yeah. So again, I meet this young lady. She's got all the stuff that the beaver cleaver, or the normal, like what I think is normal, because I live in mayhem, grew up around some form of like instability in every fashion. So I'm like, oh, this is what the normal people do. You know, she's got a good job. Her parents got good jobs. They live in a nice gated community. I'm like, if I go over there with them, I will through osmosis become like them. Right? Yeah. Not the case. Meet this girl, super nice girl. She's got her life together. I do not have my life together in any way, shape, or form. You know, manipulate the situation, tell her what she wants to hear, this, that, play the good guy, play this role, be this person that she thinks I am. And, you know, end up asking her to marry me. This is 2002. We get married, you know, and that's what, you know, again, starts a, you know, 10-year marriage of like, again, me wrecking the world around me, because that's what I do. Right. We get married, we have kids, get a business started, my first business. I'm making money. Again, I never knew how to manage money. Again, another problem. And, you know, it just went, you know, again, I caused all that. She's not a bad person. Again, but I went, you know, I manipulate this situation and tell this woman what she wants to hear, because I just want someone to take care of me and be my mother, or my, you know, my caretaker, more or less. You know, I give her all the money and I go out and be a boy. And, you know, I wrecked that, and, you know, hurt that woman emotionally. And, you know, it was just who I was, you know, I don't know how else to say it, you know, and people are always like, what? Like, again, like the lifestyle that I led, you know, from teenage year to being involved in, you know, just street level crime stuff and jails and arrest, and then a marriage of like infidelity and just money management, and you name it. Like, just, and I was just in that relationship, I was the verbally abusive, you know, it was never physically abusive, anything like that, just verbally abusive. Did not treat her fair by any means. Here's this woman that agreed to marry me, and, you know, we stood before God and all that. And like, I just crumple it up like a piece of paper and throw it away. Like, you know what I mean? So like, again, I have to own that. I have to own that. Right. So and again, it brings three children into the world along that course. I lost my cousin 3 days before his 23rd birthday, who was like my little brother. That was a very traumatic, emotional experience for me. That was in 2002 when I relocated from Fort Lauderdale to Port St. Lucie, Treasure Coast area. So that was a whole different emotional abandonment. I'm alone now because he was the only like really male confidant I had in my life for a lot of years. So he was gone, and then I officially felt like super lost. So
then things really spun out of control.
Yeah, they got bad, really bad. But I would always say like, oh, I'm not as, JT could be doing. If JT was worse than me, I would hang out with JT because I could say I'm not as bad as him. I'm good. That's but again, water seeks its own level, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, if I hang around a bunch of degenerates and I'm a degenerate, like I'm not the worst of the degenerates. Like, okay, you're still a degenerate though.
Yeah, man, it's insane. I was the type of guy that if a party was dark, I would make it darker. Yeah, and it was once again, it was me trying to just fit into a place where I knew I didn't fit. Yeah, but I was so wounded. All I knew how to do was just fade into whatever I was doing and crazy. So then things spin out of control. Your cousin dies. You're now, how old are you at this point? 30?
So when I moved up here in 2002, I was, 23. I don't know. I'm terrible with math. It's that non-formal education. I was right around about 23 to 25, right around.
Okay.
Yeah, that was like 23 because it was 3 years before his 23rd birthday, year and a half. Yeah, I was probably like 23, 24 years old when he had passed. So from 24 to 30 is when the marriage and the business and like just continued to like kids were born and it was just mayhem on my part because like my drinking and alcoholism like took a whole new just weird, just bizarre behaviors and like I was just. Again, I was a full-blown alcoholic by all means.
Wow. So for me, the breaking point came at 31. Yeah. I woke up on a Wednesday morning early because I used to open the gym. And so I'd get up at 3:30, get ready, head out to the gym. And when I woke up, I felt like my heart was doing funny things. I had these palpitations. And I didn't pay too much attention to it. I was just like, man, I'm just tired, Went to worked all morning. Right around 11 o'clock, one of my clients who was a physician came in and I said, hey, doc, can you take my pulse? I feel a little weird. So he took my pulse and he said, you probably should go get it checked out. He says, seems like your heart's a little off. Yeah. I'm like, okay. So I walked into a walk-in clinic. They put a bunch of machines around me. The nurse practitioner came in and said, you got to go to the hospital now. I said, what's wrong? She said, you have AFib, what we call holiday heart. People get this all the time when they drink. They have these long drinking sprees on the weekend. And but except I hadn't been drinking the previous weekend, yes. And some other things, right? And so run to the hospital, they hook me up to all these machines. They find an atrial fibrillation and an aflutter in my heart. Basically an electric problem in my heart from all the substances I'm doing. At the time, I'm really just hooked onto Adderall. Yeah. Because interestingly enough, I had this idea that because it was prescription, it wasn't a drug. Oh. That's what I would tell myself, right? And I could drink, and I was never sloppy, so I could just be around people and talk and
do that for you.
Yeah, and stay up all night and be okay, right? And not feel like
totally normal.
Yeah, and if you would have said at the time, JT, you have a problem, I would have been like, are you crazy, right? And no one could tell because I was working out. I looked the part and so I just kept doing my thing until that heart situation. So it was then and there that I just remembered a conversation that I had with a guy in the elevator. I recently spent Thanksgiving with him and his family. That came over and just basically, shared the gospel with me. Rejected that like crazy. Yeah. So the typical thing that non-believers say, man, he invited me to his church. I said, if I go to your church, the walls will cave in. Right?
Lean will strike me as soon as I walk.
The roof will fall right over my head. But I went anyway, and the pastor that day preached on the book of Job, and it hit me like a lightning bolt, right? The only thing I didn't resonate with was the idea that I wasn't a righteous man. Job was. Yeah. But everything else, the things he had, I felt like I had arrived to some extent. And so, man, I remember I went up to that prayer team. My buddy took me there, basically dragged me there. This dude prayed for me. I just broke down in tears. Yeah. walked out of that church and my life has never been the same, right? It was a progressive change.
Yeah.
But there was that point in where I felt the deceiving thing was everything was under control. I had rental properties. I was living in the place I wanted to live. I was doing the things I wanted to do. And so I thought, I was a man of the world. I measured everything by what I had in my pocket, right?
That's right.
So I was like, man, everything is cool. Like I have money, right? I had plenty of money in the bank. Things were going really well.
Good.
But dude, it was Sundays for me. I would feel this hole in my soul. And I just couldn't I just couldn't understand. So that's where the questioning started. It's like, how is it possible? Because I was told that if I achieved all these things and had all these things, that I would be happy. And yet here I was empty. How so? I was so disappointed.
Oh yeah.
Because I worked really hard to get there, and I got there and I was empty. So that was the time when I just put my hands up in the air and I said, God, if you are who that pastor says you are, show me, because I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
And that was that little silent prayer that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
How is that situation for you?
So, my moment of clarity, right? So again, mayhem, burning my life to the, I always had the ability to like build my life up and burn it right back down to the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was, had a business, making money, had I had my wife, had the estranged girlfriend, and just was just all over the place, just not living right. You kind of like what you mentioned, I had the stuff, and again, was just partying my way through life pretty much. And it all came together for me, right? 31. I was 31. This was 2009. I remember it because it was like yesterday, like I can still see it. It was July, the weekend of July the 19th. The 19th was going to be a Sunday. And it was my sister's birthday, and she had called me that Friday, which was the 17th, they said they were going to go out for her birthday Saturday, and said I should come down. And I was like, and again, I was just ripping and running and being wild and just, and that Friday I was headed down to, I had my own construction company. I was headed down to pick up a check because I was living check to check, even though I was making a substantial amount of money, had guys working for me, trailer, but I'm playing the shell game. Yeah. Move money here to pay here to this to that, you can't take a couple $100s out of the ATM every night and expect to have money in your bank to pay your guys. But that's how I lived, and went down there, picked up the check, had another wild night Friday night. I get into those wild nights. They take me to strange places with weird people. I wake up in a hotel room Saturday morning. The good old, time to check out, bang on the door. I'm like, I wake up panic. Like, what am I doing? How do I get here? Type thing. And I start like, this panic comes over me, like, and I'm like, oh man, like, I got to get out of here. And like, I'm like, I just got to go to my sister's. I'm going to go to her party. So I had, I used to ride motorcycles and stuff. So I go, I get my motorcycle, ride down to Fort Lauderdale from the Treasure Coast. And I just had this thought, like, I got to slow down. I'm being too wild. Like I told you when I was younger, like I was able to lay off the hard stuff, right? But the alcohol had me full blown. And I didn't say, again, it's a part of my story, but during that, 20 years old to 30 years old, my father had passed of alcoholism. I seen a lot of stuff he did along the way. He was kind of like a part-time dad when he spent time with me.
That's a big statistic with Native Americans, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. It is a trait. I've heard it's a lack of a gene to break down alcohol is what causes it. Yeah. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but anyways, that's a wormhole we don't have time to get into. But
yeah,
so my dad had passed along that time, and I'm like trying to, like, this is 2009. My dad passed in 2005. I got some closure with him, some closure to the situation in life before he passed. So that was good. However, like my mom always told me it was never that bad. I don't know what happened, blah, 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 blah. So I start doing this math, right? And like at this time, you know, I'm separated from my wife. I'm living in this apartment. I got my son's on the way. My 2 daughters are born, 3 and 4 years old. And my mom always said, I never what happened to him. I never know what happened to him. My sister's 9 years older than me. My dad left when I was 3. That means they had my sister when they were like 20, me when they were like 29. Here I am 30. I always swore I would never be my father. I would never be that monster. I would never subject my kids to that. And like the thought came over me and I'm like, I'm becoming my father. And I was like, oh, you know, and I couldn't shake the thought. And, you know, I was like, oh, we're going to go out tonight and I'm going to take it easy. And, you know, I'm not going to drink. And that never worked. And I end up getting loaded in Fort Lauderdale. I'm riding my motorcycle around. My cousin that died 3 days before his 23rd birthday died on those same highways in Fort Lauderdale on his motorcycle. And here I am saying, oh, I would never do that. Just out of respect for his death, I would never do that.
Right.
Same thing, right? Make it home that Saturday night, early Sunday morning, July 19th. My mom comes over to cook breakfast for my sister. It's breakfast. I don't even have the DC to get up off the couch because I'm loaded and I'm up all night. I get up, ride home that morning back to Fort Pierce. We were living in Fort Pierce at the time. And the thought is just like, I can't shake it. I cannot shake it. Like I'm going to die. I end up like my father. This is my path. Like I am just like him. Get home, drop my motorcycle off, go by during this, again, this is the kind of guy I am when I'm drinking and using and not, you know, not of clear mind of body and spirit, right? This woman I'm married to, I sold her this dream. I, you know, manipulated the situation. She had 2 of my children. She's pregnant with my son. She's moving from this house of mayhem I created in Fort Pierce to move to a townhouse. I don't even have the decency to help her move a box. Wow. Mind you, she's pregnant, her father and people are around. I've got trucks, trailers, guys working for me. I don't send no help. Nothing, right? This is the kind of guy I am, right? And I let her do that on her own, of course, because I'm too busy out drinking and partying. And so I go by the house Sunday evening. It was July the 19th. And because I'm going to grab a couple things, like when nobody's there, like this is how I move in life.
Right.
And I open up the door and I walk into an empty house that I created. The dents are still in the carpet. The hangers are laying on the ground. And I broke down in the living room and I said, God, please just don't let me die. You know, I said, God, don't let me die. I just want to be there for my kids. Right. And that was my moment. I never knew God. I never went to church like that or anything. And I just stood in that empty house in Fort Pierce on July the 19th. It was probably around dusk, probably around 5 or 6 o'clock. And I said, God, please don't let me die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die like this. And kind of like you, like from that moment, life started like, I look back at it now and it was almost kind of like instantly, right? But I didn't know because I'm in the moment. And I call my soon-to-be ex-wife and say, I need help. She's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. You know, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And then she's like, she connects me with her friend and her friend knows a counselor and the counselor talks to me and he directs me to meet with some people. And I start talking and meeting and it connects me with a group of people and you know, my life started to change. You know, I had a gentleman come into my life that, he changed my life forever. You know, he showed me how to be a man, what a father looks like, how to be accountable, helped me clear up some of the wreckage of the past, and you know, and take ownership in some of that guy that I was, that man that I was, and from that point on, like I started to seek God. Like I never, I never knew. I just had like this loose kind of God, understanding for a couple years. And he was, never forced it upon me. Never said, you got to do this way and you got to do this and this and that. And just kind of let me walk my walk. And I met my wife, I got remarried. That's who owns Fit Fix It with me, Chelsea. I met her along that path. Again, me and my wife split. We got a divorce, again, it's a whole, again, that's a long story. Sure. But went through that and, got right with myself and started looking for God, and along that path of, 31 years old. And, that's, I love what you do too. Like part of that, 22 to 31 years old, like I put on a ton of weight. I was not healthy. I was like 270 pounds, drinking, not eating right, blah, 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 blah. Find myself, start looking for God, start educating myself about the metabolic side of food and nutrition. And I'm working out and realized like food is it. You know, if I eat right and I manage my caloric intake and exercise, like I will lose weight. And that's what happened, right? Mm-hmm. And along that path, I meet Chelsea, and Chelsea is a godly woman raised in the church, biblically educated.
She looks like she could beat someone up. She looks like a Division I athlete.
Yeah. So again, she helps me on my walk too, right? Never drags me, just kind of leads me to church. And like this time of year, and, you know, is always special to my heart because it was during the Christmas services and the passages that Pastor Tom at Morningside Church in Port St. Lucie, where I truly found Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, is that he talked about God giving his only son for me, right? A guy like me. And I thought about my only son at the time, and I was like, wow, like that's true love. Super powerful, right? So
that's true love.
So
we don't even know how to love that way.
Yeah. So I realized, like, you know, God is or isn't, like he, you know, and I looked, you know, I went through some trials and tribulations during that path, and I used to wake up, you know, along that path, I left my construction career, got into personal training, stuff like that. And we can unpack that if we've got time, but that's what kind of like started Fit Fixins, the company. But that was my journey to God. And like you kind of mentioned, like my relationship with God and my understanding of God has evolved over the years as I've evolved as a man. Chelsea always says, like, you're a Holy Spirit guy, not a scripture educated guy, right? Because like that's
I've heard that before.
And and again, I had to know that because I didn't know, like, because I would, again, my imposterism would be like, I can't recite scripture, I don't know, and I can't go to this book and this number and read this, but like I know, I just got this thing, right? That God gave me. I know it's God given, and like that's just who I am. I'm just a spirit, like I'm a Holy Spirit guy. Like the Spirit found me, like, and I understand God, and I understand everything about it, but it's like it's so much more, you know, for me, it's the Holy Spirit. And that's why I'm thankful for like Pastor Mike at Calvary Chapel, because they talk about the Holy Spirit and like the Holy Trinity and like how that all works, how it all ties together, right? And how important it is.
Yes.
So,
I
gave you a lot there. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't go too wormhole on you.
No, dude, that's good. That's good. You know, I didn't think two tattooed guys would end up crying in an interview like this, but is what happens.
Yeah, that's liquid gratitude is what I was told. That's liquid gratitude.
That's good. So, you know, a couple of things that resonate, you know, just deeply with me. I'm a seminary dropout. And if you've never met one, you're in front of one. And it's interesting because, you know, I think there's something for everyone, right? But and I'm pretty good now at reciting scripture, and I like to read and I like to study and stuff like that. But I'm the same, right? And I've heard that other people say that about me. You know, you're not about religion, you're about relationship, and the Spirit just speaks through you, right? And I think that's super powerful. And I think guys like us often go through the trenches and go through all the battles and the trials and tribulations. And we come onto this side, so now we can speak to other people that have been through similar situations. A lot of these guys that can recite scripture and are cradle Christians, I mean, I'm not saying that there's a place and a thing that they're here to do, but they don't understand the other side, right? And I think it's important also to have that experience. I think, you know, the Bible says that he works all things together, you know, for those that love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. And so, you know, that's a big part of what those dark testimonies are good for now, right? You speak with congruency when you speak to these other guys that are in the dark. Man, this has been really, really good. I would say that we definitely need to do a part 2.
We didn't get to talk about Fit Fixins, food, nothing.
But now, I mean, you know, now your business is, you're a meal prep company. You guys have amazing food. I keep telling people, man, listen, if there's anyone that could be a good judge of that, is me, right? When I was in Tampa, I tried every single meal prep company in Tampa, and Tampa has, I don't know, 100 meal prep companies. That's like the mecca of fitness. Right. I was in competition with 30 gyms in a 5-mile radius, just to give you an idea.
That's a lot.
So meal prep companies everywhere, and they would all bring me food because they wanted me to, you know, they wanted to tap into my you know, membership, you know, following. And tried your food, and I think I brought 5 meals from Fit Fixings, and I don't think they lasted 2 hours. They just like disappeared.
It's always good to hear.
Yeah, man, it was amazing, fresh food. So Good stuff, bro. I mean, I love your story. I love how, you went through dark times. You came out on the other side. You're mentoring other people. What's the saying? Teach one.
Each one, teach one.
Each one, teach one. Good stuff. What would you say? I always ask people at the end, what are your 3 high level ideas around living a fulfilling life? Like, what are those 3 key things that people watching on the other side are like, man, that sounds great, but I'm caught up in drugs or alcohol or binge eating or overeating, which, by the way, is an idol as well.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people that feel trapped and go, that sounds like a great story, but that's just not me, and I don't even know where to get started?
Well, I think that, I think it's like, as far as like when you anything you challenge, whatever life challenges, whether it's binge eating, drugs, alcohol, infidelity, whatever the case may be, whatever your thing is, right? Your crux, it's like small steps, right? Everybody wants to jump in, both feet, deep in. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, I was 270 pounds. I couldn't go on a 1,000 calorie a day diet because I was consuming, at minimum to maintain 270 pounds, I'm at minimum consuming 2,700 calories a day at minimum. More realistically, probably 32 to 35.
And heavily addicted to that insulin spike.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, like I had to start small, incremental, work my way off. It took a year to get down to my bottom weight of like 210 pounds. So it's like anything in life, like it's, start small, start where you can start. Whatever your point A is, start there. And then, secondly, I would say like the thing is like service to others, right? God calls us to serve.
Yes.
That is our greatest thing. Cause like most, I don't want to put it out in public, like myself, keep it about me. Like I am I am a selfish being. We have self-will. That's what God gave us, is self-will. And myself, like I will abuse it. It's all about me, what I want to do, how I want to do this, which the light didn't change green on the right time. This person, it's always affecting me.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing about the world around. It's always me. So it's like, if I can get out of myself and serve others and give back and help somebody in some way, and people are like, oh, well, I don't know about food, or I don't know about working out, or I don't know. Well, maybe it's just, showing someone how to sew, or greeting at your church, or
service,
whatever service looks like to you, right? What you can do, right? And stuff like that, and service. And I would say the third big thing for as far as life, and you're saying like success, or just like,
I hear throughout your story, right? I think if I would have put things together, right, that day and when you came to the house and it was empty, you surrendered.
Yeah.
Surrender.
You got to surrender to win. That's the name of the game.
Surrender. You talked about that gentleman that helped you change your life. The service, the power of mentorship.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I heard you say, you have to practice extreme ownership.
Yeah.
You got to own it, right? Yeah. I think you really came to that point of ownership when you said, man, I'm becoming like my father. And that put that fuel in your belly to go, this can't be, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds very self-willed, because I know your transformation is truly a byproduct of relationship with Jesus Christ.
Oh, 100%.
And that's what allows you to sustain your marriage and your business and what you have now, which is an amazing, amazing thing. Yeah. Brother, this has been awesome.
Yeah, everything like you said, like God, like you said, being God-centered is key, but as far as like just stuff like that, is like the accountability and taking a step forward in the ownership and what you spoke about. Like, I think that is key and paramount, and realizing that like I like just being a servant at the end of the day, and just serving God, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's it.
The scripture says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. Love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and love thy neighbor right? So when I see people getting complicated, I'm like, dude, just remember those two things and you'll be good.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yes, fine. Remember all the other ones whenever you can, but those two, you put those in that order.
And I think people forget too that, you know, in the Bible, it talks about like, if someone's not willing to hear your message or what you have to offer, just shake the dust off your sandal and keep moving. And that's okay too. That doesn't make them bad. Maybe they're just not ready. Like all the people that came to me and probably came to you and like these little things that we see as we look back in life, we just weren't ready.
Oh, brother, I listen.
You know,
I get thrown under the bus all the time by buddies that I used to hang with back in the day that still haven't understood that. I've shared that message with them, and you know, this is sad and it sounds a little brass, but you know, the scriptures say that to those that are perishing, the things of God are foolishness.
Oh,
right?
100%.
And so they tell me all the time, that was JT, that was great, but you got to give yourself some credit. And I'm like, dude, none at all.
No.
Like me, I'd be dead a long time ago, you know, because guys like us, we're all in or all out.
Yeah.
And so, man,
it's because I start thinking that I did it.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, well.
Yeah, look at me.
Look at me. Right? No, it's like, look at people, because people always come to me, oh, look at you do this. I'm like, no. Like, first, like Chelsea guides us, but it's like all God. Yeah. Like I would not be where I'm at today had I, and again, when I took that initial, like, please save me, don't let me die, I had no idea what was coming, right?
But that was surrender. And that was, and that was genuine surrender.
Oh, 100%. And
that's all he wants.
Yeah.
Right. He says he doesn't want sacrifice. He wants mercy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of people miss the point. Right. But man, amazing.
Yeah.
Brother, it's been a true pleasure. We got to do part 2 so we can talk more about your personal training stuff, how you evolved into the food aspect, definitely. Which, you know, by the way, we have a very similar transition there because I started off with the gyms and then I started to see people coming to the gym 5-6 days a week and not changing. And I'm going, this is all about food.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
Like you said, I love your shirt. Nutrition is 90%.
90%. Yeah. So, you know, I'm like, all right, well, I'm all about results. And so I sold the gyms and then I went full blown into the nutrition aspect because I felt more impact. And
because like, that's the thing is like the food is so, again, I wouldn't have been able to, like, you like I said, you can't outwork a bad diet. Like it's all just being calorically balanced and in your nutritional, you know, your nutrition of what you're putting in your body, being calorically balanced is key. Simple as that. Like if you can manage, like if you can get your hands around that and exercise regularly, you're good. Like you'll be good. It'll come off in time because the caloric deficit. However, people, again, now they get the magic pill, the magic shot, this, that. It's just like, but is that, and again, all these diets, and I'm sure you talked to it about with your people too, is like, my question to people is always like, is it sustainable?
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
No, it's not. Well, I tell anybody, like, you can eat Jell-O for 3 weeks, you'll lose weight.
Yeah.
Like, eat Jell-O, you're going to lose weight because you're not having enough calories.
That's what's truly set us apart.
Can you do that forever though? No. Okay.
Yeah, that's what truly has set us apart is those 3 phases.
I talked to some of your clients. They've got fabulous results, and I see it. And it's like, because I think when we originally met, you're like, "Oh, it's this," and then you told me like, "No, I transitioned to this. It's just the initial kind of Kickstarter," and then we kind of. But it's again like once you learn like what a portion should look like, and like for me, like I almost know like. I can eat random like throughout the day. Well, if I can go, like probably you don't want to, you know, this is not for the clients, right? Sure. But like I can go to Five Guys, right? And have a burger and fries and know I ate about, you know, 2,500 calories, right? So I know for the rest of the day, like I can't have pizza again, or I can't go get chicken wings. Like I got to stay on the lighter side because I know where I need to be about calorically for the day.
And you can self-regulate at this point, which is key.
Exactly. So it's like, again, being accountable to yourself. What's that look like?
100%.
In every facet of our life. Some accountability and owning that, I think is a big thing.
100%. 100%. Brother, it's been awesome.
Oh, my guy. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, likewise.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. This is the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan. And we just heard an amazing story of transformation. Like many other people that have sat in this chair, I think this is an amazing story. And for those of you watching on the other side that you're possibly thinking, well, look, you know, that sounds great, but I'm in a dark place and people just don't get it, don't understand my story. I'm here to say that transformation is possible for anyone. But as you heard Tiger say, you know, and we kind of recapped here, surrender, number 1, finding a mentor, that person that's living a life of fruit where you can emulate. And then what was the last one? and then the last one is basically, you know, the surrender, the mentor, and really just
being accountable and owning it,
coming to a place of extreme ownership, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Saying, hey, you know, no pointing fingers, because it says when you point a finger, you have 3 pointing back at you.
And like my mentor said to me too, it's like, if they have a name for it, you're not the first one to do it. So let yourself off the hook.
100%. That's good.
You're not that special.
That's good.
Like someone else has done it. That's why they have a name for it and a definition in the dictionary about it.
Really good.
You did not create it.
Awesome. Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for your time. Guys, thank you for watching. JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan. We'll talk soon. Ciao, ciao.